The last thing I would like to talk about is the institutional framework, the SGP, ERM2, etc. The problem I think that exists is that the SGP is really, the Stability and Growth Pact is really under threat. Not just because many countries are, not keeping to it at the moment, which I don't see as such a big problem, but that there are continuous attempts to weaken it. Just last night, as I arrived into my hotel room here in Warsaw, I had a Skype chat with one of my friends who is a representative of one of the new member states' government in the Eurogroup. And, completely accidentally, he didn't know what I was coming for a conference. He said, "Oh, I'm so pissed off." He said, "We have the next week or next month, I remember, we have a meeting of the Eurogroup, and the French are again coming with all these things undermining the SGP. And usually we can rely on the Germans and the Scandinavians, but this time I'm not sure. Everyone is getting weaker and everything." So just to say that this is not an academic perspective. From a very practical political perspective, there seems that the SGP is under threat. And the experience we have from Slovakia is that once you enter the Eurozone, it's very important to have it for your own domestic discipline. Because the problem is that for many years, we were used to the currency, the exchange rate, being the disciplinary measure. So, if governments really do stupid things, you get the currency feedback. And that's, of course, lost. And not just in economic terms, but also in political terms, the feedback that comes from the higher premium on your government bonds, which is the only punishment you get once you're inside, is way too weaker politically, but also economically, because you can keep on borrowing much longer than you can keep on, resisting depreciation of your exchange rate. So even though as an economist there shouldn't be that much difference, the market should price in the differences. As a kind of practicing former policymaker, I think that once you enter the Eurozone, the fiscal discipline can get much weaker without some additional measures. The SGP is the only thing we have. And the good thing about being a small Eastern European country is that actually the other member states will use it against you. So you will not be as lucky as the Germans and the French. You will get whacked over your head. And that, I think, is very useful because it increases the credibility. And what makes it even more credible is that we get the structural funds. So there is something to whack us over the head with. So you don't even have to go to the other things. The one thing I would like to say on the ERM2, because I think that's going to be very interesting, and where I respectfully disagree with my German colleague, is that yes, 4 countries managed to join from Central and Eastern Europe, but they managed to join in the very nice weather, including us. I mean, we swam to the shore as the storm was starting, but we got there just in time. And even though I don't think the crisis will continue for many years from now, this environment is now different. And there are many more sharks in the water. So, to now say that, try swimming, if the sharks eat you, try again, I think that's not really a very viable proposition. And also from a legalistic point of view, we know that the ERM2 did not exist when the Maastricht Treaty was being signed. The ERM2 was created after '92 when there was the first big currency crisis in Europe. And the ERM2 condition has been continually reinterpreted over the last 17 years. So it's different from the other 4. And it's also different in the sense that Mr. Allen said, so I'm just going to repeat that, because if someone says something smart, it's better to just repeat it rather than trying to say it again. It's different from the other 4 criteria in the sense that the other 4 criteria have their own economic sense for the country, whereas the ERM2, I think, is fairly debatable whether it makes sense. On the other hand, I think the problem is really not economic. The problem is political. And the problem is as follows. In '91, the Germans made an extremely enlightened decision to give up the Deutschmark and gave up the power that comes with that. And agree with the euro. I think we fail to appreciate how extremely enlightened that was. I cannot imagine any other major government on the planet doing that. I cannot imagine the French, or certainly not the Americans, no one. Only Germans. So, they kind of said, okay, we used to be the landlords, we own the house, but come in, own it with us and make the decisions with us. But of course, then you have all these very dodgy people coming and wanting to share your landlording rights. So, the Germans were very strict on saying, look, we cannot say, it's not nice in a nice society to say, the Italians are too dodgy to accept. So we cannot say that. So we have to say, we have to set certain criteria to make sure that the Italians can never join. So that's what the Germans did. But the problem is that, as we all know, then the Italians and all the others, they really kind of mended their ways for a very brief time, I have to say. and they joined, you know, and in some cases, like the Greeks, they even kind of falsify the paperwork to make sure that they can get in. So, you know, and now they are in. And so imagine if you are a German government, and, you know, you now have all these dodgy co-landlords work with you. And some of them return to their dodgy ways instead of being kind of nice, reformed capitalists. So, you know, and now there is another group of people banging on the door saying, please let us in, otherwise we're going to freeze outside. You know, I mean, I can understand why the Germans are not very enthusiastic about it, but I think we should be frank that that's the real reason. I mean, all the kind of other things I think are the rationals for that. And the last thing, which might be more controversial, is about the European response to the kind of US, to the crisis in the political sense. Is that, and I think Dr. Mertz's presentation was a kind of very coherent case of that, but it's the general, I would say, European argument, which is that, you know, look, we were all doing very nicely, behaving very responsibly, and then came these Americans, these Anglo-Saxons, these US, they infected us, you know, and what can we do now? You know, I mean, it's their fault, they should clean up their act. But, and, you know, I think there's quite a large degree of truth in that, but what we didn't discuss today is, how about our own immunity? Why was it so easy to infect us? Why are the German Landesbanken in trouble? You know, I mean, that's not George Bush and Alan Greenspan's fault, I would say. So what about our immunity? And what did we do? And what are we doing for our immunity? And also, what are we doing to come up with new medicines to cure this? And I think that's the debate we should have. I mean, it's all very nice to wag the Americans again over their heads with, you know, the wicked things they did, but it's not very helpful. Even if it's politically very helpful. I mean, my Prime Minister, he never fails to make a speech where he says the same thing, because it kind of makes this into exogenous event, you know, that we just have to endure, but it's just not very good policy making, I find. So thank you very much, and these are my remarks from the Slovak experience.
Thank you.